Today's gospel reading, the scribes and the Pharisees, they ask our Lord for a sign. And why are they asking for a sign? This is kind of a silly question because the reality is that our Lord is performing all kinds of signs. He's doing all kinds of miracles. He's casting out demons. He's escaping any and every trap that they set for him. So it's kind of like obvious that he is God incarnate, who he claims to be, or at least it's clear and evident that the power of God is working in and through him. Now, like I said, our Lord is doing all these signs, so it's like, why would you be asking for a sign? And by asking for a sign, it's kind of like they're saying, well, prove what you're saying. Prove to us. Give us the evidence. Give us the proof. Okay? But like I said, he's doing all these things already, so if they had merely made the effort to follow our Lord around, to observe his miracles, they probably didn't follow our Lord around. They just heard about these miracles. Maybe they just dismissed them and said, no, it's not true. Even when, for example, when the paralytic who was paralyzed for 38 years or whatever, remember how they interrogated the guy afterwards? It's like they wouldn't believe, no matter how much evidence there is. So notice our Lord's response, that no sign will be given except the sign of the prophet Jonah. So just as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the sea monster, so the Son of Man will be in the heart of the earth. So in other words, he's going to die on the cross. He's going to be buried, and on the third day, he will rise again. So just like Jonah, on the third day, the whale spits him out, and he goes and preaches to the Ninevites. So also with our Lord, he's going to resurrect, and this is the greatest sign. And in fact, in the early church, it was primarily the resurrection of our Lord that was preached. It was the main topic of their preaching, that Christ has conquered the power of death, and he has the ability to conquer the power of death for us. He has opened the gates of heaven for us, therefore we need to follow him. And when it comes to the resurrection of our Lord, the evidence for the resurrection of our Lord is just overwhelming. So even the evidence of the apostles as contained in the scriptures, various detectives, for example, have investigated the scriptural accounts of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and they say that it's not a made-up story. So some people say, wow, these Christians, they just made up this story of the resurrection. The reason they say that is because if it was a made-up story, everyone would just agree on all the details. But we don't see that. We see these discrepancies. Was there one angel or two angels, and slightly different versions of the same accounts, although the essentials are the same, which is exactly what you would expect at a crime scene. If some investigator was investigating it, everybody's story would be slightly different, although they would all agree on the essentials. So this is a clear indication of the authenticity. Furthermore, if it was a made-up story, the apostles would not have expressed their doubt. For example, doubting Thomas, right? And they wouldn't have attributed our Lord's appearances to the women first. So our Lord appears to the women. They are the ones who testified to the apostles. And the testimony of women was not acceptable in those days. So for them to record this, it's silly, but they're basically recording the truth because this is how it happened. And of course, we know that the apostles, all except for one, well, Judas committed suicide, but all the others, all except for John the Evangelist, they were all martyred for the faith because of their belief in the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ. In other words, no one would lay down their life for something that they knew was false. They believed it to be true. They knew it was true. They knew our Lord had resurrected. And this is why they're willing to lay down their lives. The conversion of St. Paul is also a tremendous testimony to the authenticity of the resurrection of our Lord, because he was so opposed to Christianity. It's only our Lord who appeared to him on the road to Damascus who could convert him. In addition to that, we have the Shroud of Turin, which in modern times is overwhelming evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Scientists have investigated it, examined it extremely thoroughly, a lot of them intending to prove that it's a fake, a forgery, but all of them who investigate it become believers that it is authentic, that it must be the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ. So today we have so much evidence. In addition to that, we have the testimony of the saints, and the holy individuals, the church fathers, and all these individuals who testified to the truth, not just by their words, but by the example of their lives. In other words, here is the evidence that following Jesus is going to transform your life. You're going to become a better person, not just a better person, but a holy person, even a saint that we remember so far back, like today's Saint Apollinaris, right? So all these saints testify to the validity of our faith, including people like Mother Teresa of Calcutta. In addition to that, we have all kinds of miracles happening today. And not just miracles, like for example at Lourdes, thousands of miracles have taken place. Here in Canada, in Montreal, thousands of miracles have taken place through Saint Andre Bessette, Saint Joseph, who's the patron saint of Canada. In addition to that, we have something like the appearances of Our Lady in Fatima in 1917, where she predicted that on the last day of her appearances to the children, October 13th of that year, that she will give a sign, or God will give a sign to convince people that she's really appearing. In other words, if you want a sign, if you want proof, if you want evidence, here it is. And 70,000 people gathered for that last apparition, and not only believers came, but people who were just curious. There were many atheists who came just to mock the children, to mock these believers because they didn't think anything was going to happen. And in addition to that, there were many newspaper reporters who also came and reported the events. And it was published in newspapers. It was totally astounding, totally amazing. So in other words, the evidence, the proof is there. But the problem is, kind of like with the scribes and the Pharisees, they're not willing to look at all the signs. They're not willing to consider. They're too busy pursuing their own things, and even if you bring this topic up with them, they're not interested. Just like the scribes and the Pharisees were not interested in following our Lord to see for themselves the miracles that he was performing. This Tuesday, we have our Alpha program starting up. And Alpha is it's good for people who are already Catholic, who are already committed to the faith. It's a good kind of review, but it also equips you to be better able to speak about your faith. So that's one good thing. If there's any who want to become Catholic, it's a prerequisite in our parish before they can take RCIA. But it's also and especially intended for people who are just curious, who might have questions about the faith, or who are fallen away Catholics or Christians. Why not come and just consider some of the evidence that is going to be presented? Do you want proof? Do you want evidence? Come to our Alpha program. It's starting tomorrow, this Tuesday, starting at 6:45, lasting till 8:30. It will continue for 9 consecutive weeks, and there will be one retreat day, which will be on a Saturday. So consider coming yourself. Invite someone, maybe your spouse or someone who's away from the faith, or someone who's just curious, or maybe just asking questions, or just say, I come out of curiosity. Let's just go see what it's like. You get a free meal, a free dinner, an opportunity to socialize a little bit, get out of the house. What a wonderful thing to do. So come and join us this Tuesday, starting at 6:45.